Some fighters become champions. Some become legends. But only a few truly change the way we think of what a true warrior should be. Max Holloway is one of those fighters. Over the years, he has set dozens of UFC records, become one of the most spectacular fighters in the organization's history, and earned the respect of millions of fans around the world. He seemed capable of withstanding any blow and continuing to fight even when his strength was waning. But behind these achievements lies a different story. The story of a boy who grew up without a father, experienced a difficult childhood, and managed to escape from a world where many people never get a second chance. It was these challenges that shaped his character and taught him never to give up. Today, Max Holloway's name has become a symbol of resilience, courage, and incredible willpower. But to understand how an ordinary guy from Hawaii became a living legend of the UFC, we must return to the place where his most important fight began, the fight for his own future. Max Holloway's story did not begin under the glare of spotlights or amidst the roar of crowds in massive arenas. He grew up in the small Hawaiian town of Waianae, an area where poverty, drugs, and crime were part of everyday life. When Max was still a child, his father left the family, and his mother battled drug addiction for a long time. It seemed as though fate had already mapped out a bleak future for him. However, there were people around him who changed his life. His grandparents took on the responsibility of raising him, surrounding him with care and instilling in him key life values: respect, discipline, and responsibility. It was his grandfather who became the role model of a real man for Max, the kind of figure he had so sorely lacked during his childhood. During his school years, Holloway tried his hand at baseball and American football, but he discovered his true passion in combat sports. Inspired by the success of the legendary B.J. Penn, he set a goal for himself that seemed almost impossible at the time: to become the next UFC champion from Hawaii. After finishing school, Max Holloway did not look for a backup plan. He was firmly resolved to dedicate his life to mixed martial arts. While his peers were still deciding on their future careers, Max was already stepping into the cage to prove he was capable of achieving something greater. He made his professional MMA debut at the age of 18, and after just a few fights, he earned the chance to compete for a local promotion's championship belt. His opponent was a seasoned veteran with over 50 bouts under his belt. Despite the disparity in experience, the young Holloway went the full 5 rounds and emerged victorious, claiming his first title. This success did not go unnoticed. Just a few months later, Max landed a long-awaited UFC contract. At 20, he became the organization's youngest fighter. However, the realization of his dream brought a stern test. Instead of a gradual build-up, UFC management immediately pitted him against the division's toughest fighters. That marked the beginning of the hardest phase of his career, one that changed Max Holloway forever. The young Max Holloway's UFC debut turned out to be nothing like he had imagined. In his very first fight, he faced Dustin Poirier, one of the division's most talented fighters. Max started the bout confidently on the feet, but once the action shifted to the ground, Poirier's experience proved decisive. Holloway suffered his first defeat in the world's Premier League. But that was just the beginning of the challenges. Despite a few impressive victories, Max soon lost to the formidable wrestler Dennis Bermudez and then fell to rising UFC star Conor McGregor. After 6 fights, his record stood at just 3 wins and 3 losses. Many experts were quick to write him off, believing the young Hawaiian simply wasn't ready to compete at the level of the planet's best fighters. But it was precisely at that moment that Holloway's true character shone through. Instead of making excuses, he returned to the gym and began working even harder. Max would later say that every defeat was not a step backward, but a most valuable lesson on the road to the championship. It was these setbacks that transformed a talented fighter into a future UFC legend. After a rocky start, many stopped believing in Max Holloway. Yet, that was precisely when the most important phase of his career began. He put past losses behind him and focused entirely on a single goal: becoming the UFC champion. Win after win, Max steadily climbed the rankings. His fighting style grew increasingly dangerous. His incredible pace, relentless pressure, and endless combinations literally broke his opponents. While other fighters would tire by the 3rd round, Holloway only seemed to pick up steam. Standing in his path, one after another, were the division's toughest contenders: Cub Swanson, Charles Oliveira, Jeremy Stevens, and Ricardo Lamas. Each successive victory proved that the man facing the fans was no longer the inexperienced kid who had suffered losses early in his career. A future champion was emerging before their eyes. When his winning streak reached 9 consecutive fights, the UFC could no longer ignore Holloway. He had earned the shot he had dreamed of since childhood. A head lay about for the interim championship belt against former lightweight champion Anthony Pettis. It was the final step before facing the man many considered the greatest featherweight in history, Jose Aldo. By the end of 2016, Max Holloway was already considered one of the best fighters in the featherweight division. A victory over former champion Anthony Pettis earned him the interim UFC title and the right to face the man who had ruled the division for nearly a decade, Jose Aldo. To many, Aldo was an invincible legend. During his reign as champion, he had defeated the best fighters of his generation and seemed virtually untouchable. Moreover, the fight was taking place in the heart of Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, where thousands of fans had turned out to support their champion. Aldo took the first round, but then the tide turned. Max gradually ramped up the pace, pushing the champion to his absolute limits. Holloway seized the initiative round after round, until he unleashed a barrage of strikes on the Brazilian in the 3rd. The referee was forced to stop the fight. At the age of 25, Max Holloway defeated the greatest featherweight of his generation and became the new UFC champion. A few months later, he faced Aldo again in a rematch and once more secured a stoppage victory, definitively proving that a new era had begun in the division. It was at that moment that the guy from Hawaii ceased to be merely a champion. He became a true UFC legend. After winning the championship belt, Max Holloway became the primary target of the entire featherweight division. However, his true test was a title defense against the undefeated Brian Ortega. Shortly before the fight, worrying news emerged regarding the champion. Health issues forced the bout to be postponed, and many began to seriously speculate that Holloway's career might be on a decline. Max offered no response to his critics. He chose to prove his strength where it mattered most, inside the octagon. From the opening seconds of the fight, Holloway seized the initiative and began delivering what was arguably the best performance of his career. His speed, precision, and incredible volume of strikes left Ortega without a chance. Round after round, the champion completely controlled the bout, literally picking apart one of the division's most dangerous contenders. Before the start of the 5th round, doctors stopped the fight. Ortega's injuries were too severe for the bout to continue. That evening, Max didn't just defend his title. He set a new UFC record by landing 290 significant strikes in a single fight. Many experts and fans still regard this performance as one of the most dominant in the organization's history, a night when Holloway proved he was on a completely different level. After several successful title defenses, Max Holloway was considered the best featherweight on the planet. However, in 2019, he faced a new challenger, Alexander Volkanovski. The Australian entered the title fight on an impressive winning streak and managed to unlock the key to the champion's style. His constant low kicks and smart work at range prevented Max from imposing his usual pace. After 5 rounds, the judges awarded the victory to Volkanovski by unanimous decision. A rematch took place several months later, a bout many consider one of the most controversial title fights in UFC history. Holloway stepped into the octagon a completely different fighter. He scored 2 knockdowns against Volkanovski in the opening 2 rounds and looked significantly more impressive. However, the champion managed to seize the initiative in the closing stages of the fight, and after the final bell, the judges once again awarded the victory to the Australian. Millions of fans, journalists, and former champions were convinced that Max had done enough to win. Yet Holloway himself refused to make excuses or dispute the decision. He simply thanked the fans for their support and returned to the gym. That was the moment it became clear. A true champion is defined not only by victories, but also by the dignity with which he accepts the most painful defeats. After a controversial loss in his rematch with Volkanovski, many began to doubt whether Max Holloway could return to his former level. Some believed the endless wars in the octagon had taken their toll, while others were convinced the former champion's best years were behind him. But once again, Max chose to let his actions speak louder than words. In January 2021, he faced one of the division's best boxers, Calvin Kattar. Before the fight, the American confidently declared that he held the edge over Holloway in striking technique. However, it became clear from the very first seconds that the audience was in for a spectacular show. Max set an incredible pace, unleashing hundreds of strikes and completely controlling the fight. Kattar displayed remarkable resilience but had virtually no answer for the former champion's speed and precision. In the 5th round, Holloway did the seemingly impossible. Right in the middle of the fight, he turned toward the commentators and spoke to them while simultaneously dodging his opponent's strikes. Over the course of 5 rounds, Max landed 445 significant strikes, setting a new UFC record. This performance stands as one of the most spectacular in the history of mixed martial arts and reminded the world that Max Holloway remains one of the most outstanding fighters of his generation. Today, Max Holloway's name is no longer associated solely with a championship belt. Over the course of his career, he has set dozens of UFC records, delivered numerous unforgettable performances, and established himself as one of the most exciting fighters in the history of mixed martial arts. Yet, Holloway's true legacy lies beyond mere statistics or titles. His story is inspiring because it proves that a difficult childhood, early defeats, and even the most painful setbacks do not define a person's future. It was through sheer force of character that Max rose to the pinnacle of the sport, earning the respect of fans and rivals alike. Over the course of 5 rounds, Max landed 445 significant strikes, setting a new UFC record. This performance stands as one of the most spectacular in the history of mixed martial arts and reminded the world that Max Holloway remains one of the most outstanding fighters of his generation. Even after losing his championship belt, he kept stepping into the octagon against the world's toughest fighters, never ceasing to prove that a true champion never gives up. And perhaps Holloway is best defined by his own words, "I'm not done yet." Now, Max is set to face a legend who hasn't fought in 5 years, Conor McGregor, and we'll soon find out who comes out on top this time. To make sure you don't miss any new episodes, hit that subscribe button. I'm looking forward to a big like and a detailed comment from you. Cheers!